I think we're starting a new chapter today, which is chapter 18, I believe. Okay, so if you have your Krishna book ready. Chapter 18, Killing the Demon Pralambasura. So it's a fairly short chapter, very nice, sweet chapter. We'll read together. So we'll start from the introduction. So if you haven't got a copy of Krishna book, because I know Vidushi is here for the first time, you can find Krishna book online. If you just search for Krishna book on Google, for example, you'll be able to find it, and you can find us on chapter 18, okay, in Krishna book. Or if someone could post a link in the meantime, that would be really helpful. Okay, there it is on the chat. Thanks, Panchali. Okay, so I'll just sing the invocations prayer, and then we'll start reading. Krishna, 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 Hey. Krishna, 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 Hey. Krishna, 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 Rakshamam. Krishna, 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 Pahimam. Rama Raghava, Rama Raghava, Rama Raghava, Rakshamam. Krishna Keshava, Krishna Keshava, Krishna Keshava, Pahimam. This is a song sung by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is known as the Golden Avatar, Gauranga. Gauranga Mahaprabhu. He is known as the most recent incarnation of Krishna. And his mission was to spread the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra around the world. So we come in the line of teachings of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And Srila Prabhupada, our ISKCON founder Acharya, has given us this Krishna book, which is a summary study of the Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th canto, the pastimes of Krishna. Okay? Alright, so our first reader is going to be Panchali today. So I just ask everyone to keep your cameras on while we're doing the reading. And feel free, we're just going to read paragraph by paragraph. Feel free to comment or question after the paragraphs. Don't be shy, there's no silly question, no silly comment. It's nice to hear everyone's thoughts and have a discussion. Okay, so hand over to you, Panchali.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Jai Prakash, Prabhu. I just feel a bit odd today starting instead of you. We have to go back to the usual order next week. It feels nice to start with you. Okay, I'll start reading. So killing the demon Pralambasura. After extinguishing the devastating fire, I can't speak today. Krishna, surrounded by his relatives, friends, cows, calves, and bulls, and glorified by his friends singing, again entered Vrindavana, which is always full of cows. While Krishna and Balarama were enjoying life in Vrindavan, in the midst of the cowherd boys and girls, the season gradually changed to summer. The summer season in India is not very much welcomed because of the excessive heat, but in Vrindavana, everyone was pleased because summer there appeared like spring. This was possible only because Lord Krishna and Balarama, who are the controllers even of Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva, were residing there. In Vrindavana, there are many falls which are always pouring water, and the sound is so sweet that it covers the sound of the crickets. And because water flows all over, the forest always looks very green and beautiful. Shall I continue or stop?
You can just pause for a moment. So this is introducing the scene of Vrindavan Dham. Vrindavan Dham is, Srila Prabhupada explains to us that just like in a foreign country, you can have embassies representing various countries. Just like here in the UK, you have the Indian embassy, the Chinese embassy, the Russian embassy, right? You're familiar? And so on. So, like that, what Krishna is doing is he's bringing the spiritual world into this material environment, into this earth planet. He's bringing the spiritual world from Vaikuntha, he's bringing Goloka Vrindavan down with him. And he's creating an embassy here in this world so that we can understand the activities that go on in the spiritual world. So, and this paragraph, it captures what happens in the spiritual world, what happens in this world in Vrindavan, which is an embassy of the spiritual world. Yeah. So does anyone have any thoughts on that, or like to ask about this? Any points that stood out from here about Vrindavan? The one thing here is mentioned that in the summer in India it's normally very hot, right? But in Vrindavan, when Krishna is there, is not experienced as extreme heat, or excessive heat. Why is that? Based on what we've discussed so far. Any thoughts? So while it might be very hot in India, when Krishna was in Vrindavan, it wasn't very, very hot. It was more like spring. Why do you think that might be?
Because if you're surrounded, or if you're in the
I
vicinity
can't hear you
of
so well.
Krishna, can you hear me now?
It's very faint. Maybe you have to come a bit closer.
Now?
Or speak up. Much better, yeah.
Yeah. So it's probably because if you are with Krishna, in the vicinity of Krishna, or in Krishna consciousness, everything is very pleasant. Life is pleasant. Your surroundings are pleasant. So, it's probably a kind of metaphoric way of saying that, if you're surrounded by Krishna or with Krishna, despite what is happening elsewhere, life around you or with you or for you will always be pleasant.
Yeah. Being close to Krishna, you definitely don't experience the pains of the external environment. Yeah. Okay. Anything else? Hare Krishna?
Yep. Also, at that time, Vrindavan was all forest, wasn't it?
Yes.
So when it's a forest, it's lots of trees, and that keeps the place cool, nice and pleasant. And on top of that, Yamuna River also was flowing very nicely. Well, better than now, whatever the reason. That's my understanding as well.
That's a nice point you added, yeah. So because the forest atmosphere is there, and it mentions here there's so many waterfalls as well. And that makes the forest look very beautiful too. So yeah.
Another
I think
thing I
Shashi
like
Mataji, sorry?
Another thing I like to say about Vrindavan, how we got Vrindavan on a earthly planet, is because of Radharani actually. Because what happened when Krishna decided to come on earthly planet to do all the pastimes, he asked Radharani to come, and she said, "No, I'm not coming." And Krishna said, "Why?" And she said, "I can't leave all this forest and river and what do you call it, Govardhan, and I can't leave all this because I'm so attached to all this. I'm enjoying. I'm very happy here. And when I go with you on earthly planet, there's nothing there." So Krishna decided to have a Vrindavan here so Radharani can come. And that's how. So basically, we have Vrindavan because of Radharani.
Okay.
She demanded to Krishna that if you create a Vrindavan, I come.
So she is Vrindavan Ishwari.
Yeah.
So here in London we have London Ishwara.
Yeah.
But he is accompanied by Vrindavan Ishwari.
Even we just had a Kartik month. So Kartika is one of the name of Radharani as well.
Yes. All right. Shashi, did you want to add something? Have a question? I saw you raise your hand. Don't be shy.
Covered now.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, Krishna, as it says here, because Krishna and Balaram are the controllers of even Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma, therefore they could make the atmosphere any way they like, just by the desire that the whole environment can change. Yeah. So they, by their desire, it never became hot summer, but it stayed like spring. It's also mentioned here as another point. Okay, would you like to read on now, Panchala? You have to take yourself off mute.
Sorry. The inhabitants of Vrindavana were never disturbed by the scorching heat of the sun or the high summer temperatures. The lakes of Vrindavana are surrounded by green grasses, and various kinds of lotus flowers bloom there, such as the Kahalara, Kanja, and Utpala. And the air blowing in Vrindavana carries the aromatic pollen of those lotus flowers. When the particles of water from the waves of Yamuna, the lakes and the waterfalls touched the bodies of the inhabitants of Vrindavana, they automatically felt a cooling effect. Therefore, they were practically undisturbed by the summer season.
Yeah. Okay. Anyone else would like to comment? I think we've discussed this now a little bit. We'll move on to the next paragraph then.
Want me to continue?
Yeah, sure.
So Vrindavana is such a nice place. Flowers are always blooming, and there are various kinds of decorated deer. Birds are chirping, peacocks are crowing and dancing, and bees are humming. The cuckoos there sing nicely in 5 kinds of tunes. Krishna, the reservoir of pleasure, blowing his flute, accompanied by his elder brother Balarama and the other cowherd boys and the cows, entered the beautiful forest of Vrindavana to enjoy the atmosphere. They walked into the midst of newly grown leaves of trees whose flowers resembled peacock feathers. They were garlanded by those flowers and decorated with saffron chalk. Sometimes they were dancing and singing, and sometimes wrestling with one another. While Krishna danced, some of the cowherd boys sang, and the others played on flutes. Some bugled on buffalo horns or clapped their hands, praising Krishna. Dear brother, you are dancing very nicely. Actually, those boys were demigods descended from higher planets to assist Krishna in his pastimes. The demigods, garbed in the dress of cowherd boys, were encouraging Krishna in his dancing, just as one artist encourages another with praise. Up to that time, neither Balarama nor Krishna had undergone the hair-cutting ceremony. Therefore, their hair was clustered like crow's feathers. They were always playing hide and seek with their boyfriends or jumping or fighting with them. Sometimes, while his friends were chanting and dancing, Krishna would praise them. My dear friends, you are dancing and singing very nicely. The boys played at catching ball with fruits such as bale and amalaka. They played blind man's buff, challenging and touching one another. Sometimes they imitated the forest deer and various kinds of birds. They joked with one another by imitating croaking frogs, and they enjoyed swinging underneath the trees. Sometimes they would play amongst themselves like a king and his subjects. In this way, Balarama and Krishna, along with their friends, played all kinds of sports and enjoyed the soothing atmosphere of Vrindavana, full of rivers, lakes, rivulets, fine trees, and excellent gardens filled with fruits and flowers.
Okay, thank you for reading. So there's a book I came across once. It was called The Playground of God. It's called The Playground of God. What an interesting title for a book. Huh? Because normally the impression we have of God, and all powerful and all knowing, yeah. So this is kind of generally in the religious world, this is the impression of God, you know, the Lord of everything. Hmm? But this book was entitled The Playground of God. So that same God, but in a playful mood. And this book actually was describing Vrindavan, because Vrindavan is the playground of God. And you can see from these descriptions what a wonderful playground Krishna has. Of course, if someone has to have a playground, if God has to have a playground, then it should be the best playground of all. Not just for himself, but we can see from reading this the types of interactions he had with his loving friends. Um, and those interactions were so attractive that even the demigods, they wanted to participate in that play. So even the devas in the in the in the in the heavenly planets, in the Swarga Loka is known as the heavenly planet. Even they saw Krishna's pastimes and came in the form of boys so that they could join in some of these games, because it was more fun than even being in, or more enjoyable than even being in Swarga planets. Because Krishna has brought the spiritual world with him. The spiritual place means Vaikuntha. Vaikuntha means where there's no suffering. Because even in the high planets, if we practice yoga systems and take ourselves to higher planets, we hear from the Vedic scriptures that performing spiritual activity, or let's say performing Vedic activities, religious activities, going to the heavenly planet still means there's always some fear that my life here will end in the heavenly planets. The Vedas describe there's so many attacks from demons, uh, and they take over the positions of the devas. The devas and the asuras always having battles, we hear. So this is like always a cosmic battle going on. Star Wars. But in the spiritual world, that doesn't exist. There's only enjoyment, unlimitedly. So what are some of the games that Krishna plays with his friends? They're described here. Anyone say?
They were playing hide and seek, and they were playing like ball games. So I think they were catching balls with some fruit, amalaka fruit. So I think most of the games that the children play were created by Krishna and all the gopas. Like you can see hide and seek. They were playing. They were playing ball games like ball games. They play football and cricket and stuff like that. So they used to play all this game and uh, all these pretend games as well. They were playing like pretending like being a swan and pretending like being frogs and stuff like that. So even children these days play all these games. They were trying to imitate the deers and birds and everything. So it seems like all these games even today the children enjoy playing.
That's right, yeah. So some different examples of the games they played here.
You
So
also
one might say
blind
then,
man's buff, and it's blind man's buff. It's interesting to know, as Mataji said, these games are still being played now.
right, yeah. So this thing is interesting because we might think, what's the difference then, Like we can play these games here, we can play these games there. What's the difference, right? But there is a big difference. Would you like to know what that big difference is? Yeah? There's a big difference between the games that Krishna is playing with his friends and the games that we see in this world that children play. Big difference. So this difference is to do with form and substance. In this world, we see the form. We see the forms of happiness in this world. But we don't actually experience the substance of happiness which we're looking for in this world. So the form of happiness is there because the body is there, the mind is there, the senses are there, but the soul doesn't experience the pleasure of the material world. The soul doesn't experience the pleasure of spiritual activity because this world is bereft of that spiritual activity. So even though these games, they seem ordinary, now my mother touched upon it. She said that they're like the original. Krishna originated cricket. If you're a fan of cricket, then play the original cricket. If you're a fan of football, play the original football with Krishna in the spiritual world. So the forms are there in this world, but the substance isn't there. Imagine someone put a plate in front of you with all nice kinds of fruit and different vegetables and different types of bread and salads and dessert, jelly, ice cream, whatever you like. But you put your hand towards the plate and you can't pick up the items. They're just holograms, just images. Yeah, just a reflection. And you try to eat that. You can see the form, you can perceive it, you can try and interact with it. We will not experience it at a deep level. And so this is the experience of the material world. It's like a reflection of the spiritual world. And therefore, how long can we go playing cricket, playing football, when we're really playing hide and seek from Krishna? We should really try and find Krishna in this life and go back to him. And then we can have those games eternally with Krishna. We can experience the real substance of the relationship we have with Krishna, and we'll feel most satisfied. The boys, they play the games every day and they never get tired. So we see in the material world, they have different ideas like this, like they have this is it Disney? Like they have some cartoons like Peter Pan, the boy who never grew up. Isn't it Peter Pan? He's famous as the boy who never grew up. So this is actually Krishna. Krishna never grows up. He just plays and plays eternally. They never get tired. Every day they go to the field and look after the cows. Every day they play these ball games. They never get tired because so much of substance is there in those games. And just like Peter Pan, he plays the flute. But of course, this Peter Pan which we read about has no substance. It's just shadow. But it's a shadow or a reflection of the spiritual world. That's what this material world is.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Also, while they were playing, because of Krishna's presence, there was no danger. Nowadays, in all those graves, time to time we hear someone gets injured and someone dies, and also they get tired, and so
Yeah.
there was no danger because of Krishna's presence. That's amazing.
Yeah, that's right, Prabhu. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, in this world, we wouldn't let our children go off to the forest, right, for the day, and then come back after, and then they never ever. Krishna, it says that even one hair from his body would never move out of place. He would never get harmed. Even a single blade of hair in his hair will never be harmed from his playing. Anyone else want to share something? Okay, so Jay Prakash Prabhu, would you like to read next?
Once, while the boys were engaged in the transcendental pastimes, a great demon of the name Pralambasura entered their company. Desiring to kidnap both Balram and Krishna, although Krishna was playing the part of a coward boy as the supreme personality of Godhead, he could understand everything, past, present, and future. So when Pralambasura entered their company, Krishna began to think how to kill the demon, but externally he received him as a friend. "Oh, my dear friend," he said, "it is very good that you have come to take part in our pastimes." Krishna then called all his friends and ordered them, "Now we shall play in pairs. We shall challenge one another in pairs." With this proposal, all the boys assembled together. Some of them took the side of Krishna, some took the side of Balram, and they arranged to play in duel. The defeated members in duel fighting had to carry the victorious members on their backs, as a horse carries its master. They began playing and at the same time tended the cows as they proceeded through the Bandiravana forest.
Okay. So of course Krishna is the Supreme Lord in all circumstances, as said here. So even when he is a child, he's a Supreme God. Even if he's a baby, he's the Supreme God. What to speak of when he has a form of a fully grown adult. Then, in that being the case, he can understand past, present, and future always. In whichever form he's performing his pastime. So is there any example? Like for example, even when Krishna is a baby, yeah, he could perform superhuman activities, isn't it? Is there an example? You can think of that through the weeks that we've been reading.
Putna,
Okay.
the first demon. Yeah.
And what happened there?
Well, Putna came as a like a beautiful lady, and all the gopis thought that she was Lakshmi herself coming in, and then she entered Nand Maharaj's house, and she wanted to kill Krishna, so she put some poison on her breast, and she picked up Krishna and started feeding him. But even being a baby, Krishna had all the powers to kill, and he sucked his milk and the life air out of Putna, and she was, gone back to Godhead, and she became a nurse when she went back to Godhead, because she came in a form of a mother's mother. So Krishna gave her the what's the word called?
Position.
Yeah, gave her the life of nursing mother in the spiritual world. She was sent back to the spiritual world. And there were quite a few other examples.
Yeah.
Krishna killed the demon in the cart and everything when he was a baby.
Yeah, so in any form, God is always God. So in some traditions or some spiritual practices, you have this idea that you can become God, And now you're not God, but you can become God. If you do this spiritual practice, then you'll become God. But that's not our belief here, according to the Srimad Bhagavatam, according to the Vedic scriptures, that God is always God. We can join God, whether as a demigod or as a demon. Even they can come into the Vrindavan atmosphere and join God. But we can never take that post of God. That post is taken. Just like if in a company we have a particular role, we cannot take the role of someone that is already in another role, right? Krishna's role is always he's eternally God. That's always going to be his role, as the Vedas explain. So here he's, even as a baby or even as a small boy, he has all the same powers. And he notices this Pralambasura has come. He's a mystic who's taken the disguise of a boy, and they're playing a game. Okay, so Krishna decides to play a game with them. He puts them into two teams. The head of one team is Krishna, and the head of another team is Balaram. And they're having a wrestling match, or a duel, as it said here. So one of the games they played is wrestling, and the losing side has to carry the boys who were on the winning side. So one person is wrestling with another, and the loser has to carry the winner. And so who was on the winning side and who was on the losing side? Have we read that much yet?
No.
Okay, so let's find out who won.
In order to avoid the company of Krishna, Pralambasura carried Balaram far away. The demon was undoubtedly very strong and powerful, but he was carrying Balaram, who is compared to a mountain. Therefore he began to feel the burden, and thus he assumed his real form. When he appeared in his real feature, he was decorated with golden helmet, earrings, and looked just like a cloud with lightning carrying the moon. Balaram observed the demon's body expanding up to the limits of the clouds, his eyes dazzling like blazing fire, his mouth flashing with sharpened teeth. At first, Balaram was surprised by the demon's appearance, and he began to wonder, how is it that all of a sudden this carrier has changed in every way? But with a clear mind, he could quickly understand that he was being carried away from his friends by a demon who intended to kill him. Immediately, he struck the head of the demon with his strong fist, just as the king of the heavenly planet strikes a mountain with his thunderbolt. Stricken by the fist of Balaram, the demon fell down dead, just like a snake with a smashed head, and blood poured from his mouth. When the demon fell, he made a tremendous sound, and it sounded as if a great hill were falling upon, being struck by a thunderbolt of King Indra. All the boys then rushed to the spot, astonished by the ghastly scene. They began to praise Balaram with the words, "Well done, well done." All of them then embraced Balaram with great affection, thinking that he had returned from death, and they offered their blessings and congratulations. All the demigods in the heavenly planets became very satisfied and showered flowers on the transcendental body of Balaram. And they also offered their blessings and congratulations for his having killed the great demon Pralambasura. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport of 18th chapter of Krishna killing the demon Pralambasura.
Thank you, Prabhu. So let's go back to this beginning of this part, which we read. So now who's become victorious of these two sides who are wrestling? Who's the winning?
Team. Balaram and his team.
Balaram, that's right. So Krishna had his side, and Balaram had his side, and Balaram's team were victorious. That means Krishna and all his friends had to carry Balaram and all his friends. Yeah? And this is actually one of the sweet things about the pastimes of Krishna, that in Vrindavan, do the devotees of Krishna care whether Krishna is God or not? What do you think?
No,
No, they don't care.
they treat him as a friend.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, so why is that the case? Why they don't care that Krishna is God or not God?
They don't know, they're covered with yoga maya, aren't they?
Yeah, that's why. Yeah, that's the reason why they don't know. But why do they not care?
I
They don't
think
care.
it is sweetness of the love for Krishna, because I mean, love is like that. You cannot really love somebody if you think this is like, you know, for example, if you go to work, if there is a judge, when he's a judge at work, his attitude towards the work is different. But when he comes home, he can just play with his child, and he can just be defeated by his child and carry the child on his head. So basically the two differences is there is more sweetness when he's at home, is more himself when he's at home, and when
Yeah.
he's at work, he's like a Odaya, like, you know, it's not a Madhurya thing. So in the same way, like all these Gopas, they must have done so much austerities in their previous lives to become Krishna's friends and be themselves with Krishna. They were, you know, so they were just like treating Krishna as a friend rather than treating Krishna as God, which is much more sweeter. And Krishna enjoys that sort of pastime. He enjoys being defeated and carrying his friends on his shoulders. Then somebody going to the temple and doing big yagyas for him, or doing more sort of slokas for him, is more pleasing for Krishna to be playing with this. Um, he's more, you know, in more sort of a sweetness pastime.
Yeah, yeah. So that's a really nice example about the judge. You know, Srila Prabhupada uses that. He used that example once. He would say that like someone came for a meeting with a head of government, or like a judge, someone in a very senior position, and they were in behind the door. So the secretary told them, "Wait, you have to wait. This meeting will last, and there's no end time." And then this person was sitting there waiting and waiting for the entry to meet for his appointment with the judge. And then he just, after waiting so long, he just peered through the door just to see, why is he taking so long? Why is the person not come out? And through the keyhole, Prabhupada says, he could see that the judge was there. He was sitting on his hands and knees, and there was a child sitting on his back hitting him. So he could understand this time is the judge is spending with his child. How will I get an audience with him? He's in his private room, and I cannot access that. So the judge has his family who he's more close with than his official role, which he also has. So Prabhupada, as my mom said, has explained Krishna to be like that. He has his intimate, loving devotees, and he has that home environment, his playground with them. And at the same time, he can be the supreme Lord, huh? The supreme judge, the supreme king.
Haribol.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah, it's also Krishna was I am being with the friend, all those coward boys. He was behaving like just ordinary one of them.
Yeah. He was behaving very ordinary, isn't it? That's right.
Yeah.
So because they didn't care whether Krishna is God or not God, like sometimes you hear these like you go to wedding ceremony, and you hear these vows. I think in the West they have like the vows for weddings, in sickness or in health, in rich or in poor. I love this person. It doesn't matter. Have you heard this before?
Yeah.
So it's like we have to do it as a vow that I'm actually going to love this person, not the things that surround them. I'm not going to love them because they're healthy and because they're strong and because they're rich and because, you know. So initially we may be attracted to Krishna because Krishna is God. Krishna will help us. Krishna has got that position, that power. That's very much there. But as we begin to love Krishna, those things become less and less important. Actually, how attractive Krishna is, how loving his personality is, that becomes more important. Even to the extent which even if Krishna is ordinary, like Prabhu says, Even to that, we don't care anymore, you know. Let him be ordinary boy. Who cares? Let me pull and push him in a wrestling match because I love him so much. So this is the extent which they love Krishna. Isn't that amazing? So this is the Supreme Lord who everyone is offering praise and prayers to. And these boys are just pulling and pushing him and rolling with him in the mud. The same Supreme Person in that form of a boy. So it's really amazing that in this past time, Krishna even lost. Even though he's God, he lost. He didn't even win the wrestling match. He lost to whoever the other boy was. So Krishna enjoys, you know. Krishna enjoys that. He doesn't have a position that, you know, I'm always winning. I'm always the best. No, even he forgets that. Forget it. I just want to win. I just want to play, and I just want to. Even there's some enjoyment for him in losing. Such is the sweetness of their pastime. That he's feeling more pleasure that the boys are defeating him. Such is the sweetness of that pastime that he has with the boys.
Yeah, Krishna always wanted to, I mean, always wanted to see others happy. Always.
Yeah, so actually this is the nature of Krishna. So know that he is the Supreme Lord and he's all powerful. That's there. But Krishna has this quality called Paradukha Dukhi, which means that his happiness is in seeing others' happiness. His distress is in seeing others' distress. Imagine such a person that for him, because he's self-satisfied, nothing will disturb Krishna. And nothing which we can give. There's nothing we can actually give to God. What can we give to God? God has everything. He has no need for anything. He's Swarat, he's completely satisfied. So then what? Then what's going to make him happy? What's going to make him upset?
Love.
Yeah. So he's seeing other people become happy is making him happy. He's seeing other people distress will make him distressed. So in that mood, we can see here that when the boys defeat him, he's feeling greater happiness because they're feeling so happy that Krishna defeated you. See? So when we know this nature, this aspect of Krishna, this aspect of God, we can understand something more about who he is as a person, what his personality, how wonderful his personality is. Anyone?
So Krishna thrives on personal relationships. He's more personal than the impersonal. Losing probably brings him closer to his friends. So he actually loves that. And I quite like the example of the judge that you and Matji gave. So it's like when one is in the garb of a judge, then they are slightly more impersonal than when one is playing with his family, when it's the true self and you're being more personal. So that's the closer form, that's the dearer form of Krishna and what he really wants to be with his devotees, as opposed to the other one, as opposed to where he has to be slightly withdrawn or from the others.
Yeah. Amazing, isn't it? Krishna is so personable. Yeah. Okay, so then as the reading progressed, then so there were two parties, one winning and one losing, and that means Balaram's party won. And so Pralambasura, this demon who had entered the game, Krishna invited him in, even though he was in the disguise of a demon, even though Krishna knew he was even though he was a disguise of a gopa, a coward boy, like them. Krishna knew he was, and he invited him in, and then he thought, let me be on Krishna's side, so that I can fight with Balaram first. Pralambasura, he thought, if I, and this is explained by our acharyas, our spiritual masters, that if I fight with Balaram and defeat him, then this will break Krishna's heart. This was the mood of the demon. You know, demon has this mood that always, how can I strategically defeat God? He's seen before in the 17 previous chapters, Krishna is defeating demons every day, no problem. So he thought, let me defeat Balaram, and that will break Krishna's heart. Then I will defeat Krishna. So what a malicious mind this person has, Pralambasura. Huh? An audacity that he comes to Vrindavan, the spiritual embassy of Krishna in this world, and he behaves like this. So then Krishna lost, so he's doing multiple things here. He's losing for the pleasure of the other boys, but at the same time he's understood that, you know, this person's mentality is like this. So if I lose, then he will have to carry Balaram. So this is what happened then. So Pralambasura was carrying Balaram on his shoulders, right? And then what happened? What happened as we read on? Would you like to share? Anyone could pick up what happened next as Balaram was being carried by Pralamba.
So Balram was very heavy because he's very strong and powerful. So it felt like as if it is a mountain on Pralambasura's shoulders.
That's right, yeah. So Balaram was no less powerful than Krishna. That's a fact. Even up to the extent of feeling like a mountain. Okay, and what happened next after that? Anyone else? If anyone hasn't spoken yet, feel free to share.
So the demon fell down dead, just like a snake with smashed head.
Smashed head, yeah. So Balaram smashed his head. So not only was he feeling very heavy, but because of this mood which he's entered into Vrindavan, Balaram smashed him. Okay? And there's some quite gory examples given in the way that's done, isn't it? So you find that in the Krishna pastimes, you have everything there. You have a very sweet atmosphere of Vrindavan, as we started in the beginning of this chapter. How beautiful it is, and how serene, and how, you know, enchanting, and so many other wonderful words you can use and phrases to describe. But when there's a demon that comes into Vrindavan, it's a different story, isn't it? As in this case, you know. So what are some of those examples that are given here? Well, let's some of the descriptions of the scene.
About the Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Smita Mataji.
It's about the snake, the way he has a bit gory about the snake. I've lost the spot now where it says how the snake I've lost it, sorry. But it was the snake when the blood comes out from the mouth. Just like the snake was smashed with the head and the blood poured from his mouth.
Yeah.
So,
disgusting, isn't it?
yeah.
Yeah. So very strong impressions it creates. But this is also, because this is all spiritual activity, this is also this is also the divine activities of God. Even meditating on these aspects, So generally we focus on the, the very serene and sweet pastimes, but even these are transcendently equal. Everything in the transcendental world, because the spiritual world has no duality. Everything in the spiritual world is absolute. So whether Krishna does something good or whether he does something so-called not good, it is not resting on moral good behavior and bad behavior. Because who decides? Who's to say what is good, what is right? Who's to say this is wrong or this is bad? What the moral codes are in one country are different in another country. What's acceptable in one place is not acceptable in another place. What's acceptable at one time and one age was maybe not acceptable or acceptable before in the previous times. What is acceptable for children is not acceptable for adults. So many in this world, so many dualities, isn't it? Right? So who's to say what all these moral codes, these ideas and cultures we've grown up with, who's to say what's right and wrong? But in the spiritual world, everything is absolute. Why do we think that is? Any ideas? We'll finish with this point here. Why do we think that whatever Krishna does is always correct, always spiritually absolute, not necessarily good or bad according to our standard?
Always benefit to others.
Always beneficial, yeah.
Always beneficial.
Yeah. Why is everything beneficial that Krishna does? So in this example, Balaram has just killed someone. So someone will say, well, that's very violent. So how could we explain that?
Because Krishna and Balaram are the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In fact, he's given this demon's been liberated because he's been killed by Balaram.
Yeah. This is the thing, isn't it? So even the devas who've come from the heavens to play with Krishna, they've come and they're getting spiritual benefit. They're going to be liberated for coming to play with Krishna. And the same scene, a demon has come to fight with Krishna and Balaram, and even he's getting liberated. So in one sense, they're absolute. Whether Krishna plays with you or whether Krishna fights with you, whether Krishna play fights with you and kills you, or whether Krishna play fights with you and loses to you, it's actually all absolute. Because it's all liberated activities. You're not going to get any good reaction or bad reaction from that, because your interaction is with Krishna, and Krishna is the absolute truth.
There isn't the duality that you mentioned in the spiritual world, is there?
I'm sorry?
The duality, there isn't any duality in the spiritual world.
Yeah. Okay.
That's why it's the absolute.
Okay. Yes, there's no duality in the spiritual world. Yeah. Because the interactions are with the absolute truth. Krishna is the absolute truth. But he's the personified absolute truth. Absolute truth doesn't necessarily have to mean impersonal truth. But our concept of absolute truth is that this is a person. Everything he does is true. Every activity he does is based on truth. Absolutely. Absolutely true. So this is why we have this example of shadow and substance. Everything Krishna does is of full substance. So these are some philosophical ideas, but we can understand from the sweet pastimes of Krishna.
I just wanted to add that there is no enviness, or there is no such bad things when Krishna is doing that, because even if Pralambasur or any demon who's trying to kill Krishna, he is not feeling any He's not doing, like, if somebody does any harm to us, we want to do harm to them. That thing is not there when Krishna is killing the demons. So in a human, like if somebody is going to hurt us, if somebody tries to put an arrow on us or a sword on us, we want to kill them. That is a human nature. But with Krishna, there is no enmity, and even if it's a friend or a enemy, everybody is the same to Krishna. So that is the good quality about Krishna, that he doesn't see them in that way.
Yeah, that's right. So similar to what Prabhu was saying earlier. So Krishna, he's doing everything for the benefit of others. And how can someone do that if they don't have any envy, if they don't have any bad quality in their heart, then they can act actually for the benefit of others, because they have nothing to gain and lose. Krishna has nothing to gain, nothing to lose, so he can always act for everyone's benefit. So he's not acting out of envy, or he's not needy. Krishna's not a needy person that he needs to feel loved, or he's not jealous, like if I don't get my way. Not at all. He can, because he's so satisfied in himself, he can always act for the benefit of others. Yeah.
Prabhuji, what does the demon Pralambasura denotes? Because all the suras are some anarthas.
Oh yeah. Okay. Nice question, Mataji. Thank you. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he explains that by reading this Krishna book, we become purified from different unwanted qualities, anarthas, unwanted habits or aspects of our personality. We become purified from unwanted anarthas in the heart. So by reading this pastime of Pralambasura, Pralambasura, he represents the lust for opposite sex, the desire for profit, for adoration, for distinction. So Pralambasura, he represents the lust in the heart. And Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita that lust is the greatest sin. He says that Mahapapam, Krishna says in chapter 3 Bhagavad Gita, lust is the greatest sin. Because from lust comes anger, from anger comes greed. So it begins this perpetual cycle. That if we have a desire for something small, if we get it, we want more. If we don't get it, we become disappointed or angry. So it snowballs. Material desires, they snowball. Yeah. So Pralambasura, by reading this pastime again and again and again, we become purified from this desire, this selfish desire. Lust is like a selfish desire that I want to feel, I want the satisfaction for myself. But by reading this pastime and by hearing about how Krishna, he's actually acting for benefit of others, and all his associates, being pure-hearted, have that mentality, that nature of paradukha dukhi, acting for the benefit of others, we become purified from selfish or lusty action, lusty behavior or desires. Is that okay? Alright, I'm just conscious we're a little bit over time. So we usually end our sessions now with a round of japa. So we chant Hare Krishna mantra. And I'll see if anyone's still continuing. Just wait a moment. Can you just show your hand if you finished, just so that I have an idea? Okay, just wait a moment, it's alright. Just a couple minutes over time today, which is not a problem. All right, so thank you everyone for another week of Krishna Book. Very nice reading with you all again, as always. So for Vidushi, who's here for the first time, I'll just I'll send you my number so you can find out more about the weekly groups that we have. So I've just sent you that in the chat, and I can add you to our group. Hope you liked it. Hope it was meeting your expectations.
It was really nice. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Hope you can join us again.
Yes, sure.
So this is every Tuesday evening. Okay.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you.
And we have a WhatsApp group which
Yes.
which we post like the inspirational quotes from the readings that we've had this week. And I had an idea that maybe for everyone else, you could share, because it's an open WhatsApp group, you can share something, a reflection that you've had from the reading today, something that really stood out, something that's really a nice meditation for you, a point that was made, something new that you learned. It doesn't have to be a whole big story, but if you can just take one snippet of something that you like really like from the reading today, what was discussed and shared by the devotees. So please post that on the group, either today or tomorrow or through the course of the week. It'd be really nice to hear what everyone's reflections were from the Krishna book. So please don't be shy to share something back to the group, because we've all learned something, myself included. I learn so many things every week from reading with you all. So until next week, I wish you all the best. Hare Krishna, Srila Prabhupada
Hare
ki
Krishna.
jai.
Jai. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, everyone.